The Grand Nexus station floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of metal and light. It was bigger than any city on Earth, home to thousands of aliens from 15 different civilizations. Captain Taejun stood at the viewing port of his ship, the Harmony's Edge, and watched the station grow larger as they approached. His uniform was crisp and clean, decorated with medals that felt heavy on his chest. Today was supposed to be a celebration. Humanity was finally being invited to join the Galactic Council. "Captain, we're being hailed by station control," said Lieutenant Bora from her position at the communications console. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls, and she looked up at him with her sharp, dark eyes. "They're giving us the ceremonial approach vector. We're expected to dock in 30 minutes. Taejun nodded and turned to face his crew. They all wore their best uniforms, looking more like diplomats than soldiers. Dr. Hana was reviewing her notes on council customs, making sure they wouldn't accidentally offend anyone. The xenobiologist had spent months preparing for this moment, learning about each alien species and their cultures. "Remember," Taejun said to his crew, "we're here to make friends, not enemies. The council has been watching us for years. They've seen our history, our wars, our mistakes. We need to show them that we've grown beyond all that." The docking process was smooth and professional. When the airlock opened, they were greeted by Ambassador Velthris, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Light moved through its transparent body in waves of color, and when it spoke, the words came from a device attached to what might have been its chest. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Velthris said. Its voice was musical and pleasant. "We are honored to receive you into our halls. Your species has shown remarkable progress in such a short time. We look forward to learning from each other." Taejun bowed slightly the way Dr. Hana had taught him. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity." They were led through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some flew, their wings creating gentle breezes in the recycled air. One species looked like walking flowers, their petals shifting colors as they communicated with each other. Bora watched everything with careful attention, her training as a tactical officer making her notice exits, security stations, and patrol patterns even in this peaceful setting. The grand reception hall was enormous, with a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the stars themselves. Thousands of aliens had gathered to witness humanity's introduction to the council. Music played from somewhere, a strange combination of sounds that was both beautiful and alien. Tables were loaded with food from 100 different worlds, though Dr. Hana had warned them to be careful about what they ate. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council," Velthris began, its voice amplified to fill the massive space. "Today we welcome our newest candidates for membership. The humans have risen from their small blue world to reach out to the stars. They have overcome their violent past, evolved beyond their predatory origins, and learned the value of peace. We celebrate their transformation." Taejun felt a slight tightness in his jaw at those words. Violent past, predatory origins. The way Velthris said it made it sound like humanity had been some kind of savage animals that finally learned to behave. But he kept his diplomatic smile in place and gave the speech he had practiced for weeks, talking about cooperation, mutual understanding, and shared futures. The celebration continued for hours. Council members approached the human delegation with curiosity, asking questions about Earth and human culture. Most of them seemed kind and genuinely interested, though Taejun noticed a pattern. They all seemed surprised by simple things. Surprised that humans appreciated music. Surprised that humans created art. Surprised that humans could be gentle and thoughtful. "They think we're still animals playing at being civilized." Bora whispered to him during a quiet moment. "Did you hear how they talk about us?" "I heard," Taejun replied quietly. "But we knew this would happen. Let them underestimate us. As long as we get membership, it doesn't matter what they think." Dr. Hana joined them, holding a glass of something that looked like glowing water. "Actually, it matters quite a bit," she said. "I've been studying their biology and history. None of these species evolved as predators. They're all prey animals or peaceful herbivores. They don't have predators on their homeworlds anymore. They've never had to fight for survival the way we did." Before Taejun could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The music stopped. The lights changed from warm and welcoming to harsh red emergency lighting. Aliens around them began making sounds of distress, their various forms of communication blending into a chorus of fear. Velthris materialized near them, its crystal body now pulsing with rapid agitated colors. There has been a breach. The harvesters have entered the station. This has never happened before. Our security forces are mobilizing, but the ambassador seemed unable to finish the sentence. The harvesters? Dr. Hana asked quickly, her scientific mind already working on the problem. Raiders, Velthris explained, its voice shaking, biomechanical beings that steal genetic material and biological samples. They've terrorized the outer colonies for decades, but they've never attacked a council station. We thought we were safe here. Taijun's demeanor changed instantly. His diplomatic smile vanished, replaced by the focused expression of a military officer assessing a threat. Lieutenant Bora, get me tactical data on these harvesters. Dr. Hana, find out what the Council's defense capabilities are. I need numbers, weapons, response times. Around them, Council security forces were arriving, but something was wrong. The alien soldiers looked terrified. They held their weapons awkwardly, as if they weren't quite sure how to use them. Some were trembling. Others had frozen in place, their biology betraying them with ancient fear responses that evolution had never bred out of them. A message came through on every screen and speaker in the station. The voice was harsh and mechanical, speaking in the Galactic Common Language. Council species, you have 30 minutes to transfer all genetic databases and biological samples to our ships. If you comply, most of you will survive. If you resist, we will take what we want from your corpses. Choose wisely. The panic in the reception hall grew worse. Aliens were running in every direction, calling for loved ones, trying to find safe places to hide. Council security forces attempted to establish defensive positions, but they moved slowly, hesitantly, like people who had read about violence in books but never experienced it firsthand. Taijun pulled Bora and Dr. Hana aside, moving them away from the crowd. His voice was calm and quiet, but there was something different in his eyes now, something old and dangerous that had been hiding behind his diplomatic mask. Contact the ship, he ordered. Tell them to prep all combat protocols. Don't ask for permission. Don't wait for authorization. I want weapons ready, armor distributed, and tactical teams assembled in 5 minutes. Sir, Bora said. And there was no question in her voice, only acknowledgement. She understood what he was really saying. The diplomacy was over. Dr. Hana looked at him with concern. The council will notice. They might see it as aggression. Taijun watched the terrified aliens scrambling around them and made his decision. Let them notice. These people need help, whether they're ready to admit it or not. He touched his communicator. All human personnel, this is Captain Taijun. Authorization code Apex 7. Switch to combat operations. Somewhere in the station, deep in the parts where the harvesters had breached the hull, something was about to change. The Galactic Council was about to learn what humanity really was beneath all the art and music and philosophy. They were about to see what happened when you cornered a predator and threatened its allies. The hunt was about to begin. The Council's command center was in chaos. Dozens of alien officials stood around holographic displays showing the harvester breach points, but nobody seemed to know what to do. Their military coordinator, a tall being with 6 arms and skin like tree bark, was trying to establish communication with the raiders. Trying to negotiate, trying to offer them something less than everything they demanded. Taijun watched from the back of the room and felt something twist in his stomach. These people were going to get themselves killed. Dr. Hana stood beside him, her tablet showing biological data on the council species. Look at this, she whispered, turning the screen so he could see. Their stress hormones are off the charts. Heart rates dangerously elevated. Some of them are literally freezing in fear. It's not cowardice, Taijun. Their bodies are betraying them. They don't have the neurological wiring to handle direct confrontation. They've never had to, Taijun said quietly. He watched as the military coordinator offered the harvesters access to non-essential genetic databases, trying to bargain for time. On the displays, he could see the raiders pushing deeper into the station, taking hostages, setting up defensive positions in the residential sectors. 23 minutes left on the ultimatum, and the council was negotiating its surrender. Lieutenant Bora appeared at his side, moving silently despite the armored vest she now wore under her uniform jacket. She handed him a small earpiece. Private channel to our people. The crew is ready. Sergeant Deho has tactical teams staged at access points near all 3 breach zones. They're just waiting for your order. Taejun put in the earpiece and immediately heard the calm, clipped voices of his security teams. They were speaking in Korean, using military shorthand that only they would understand. Grid references, enemy counts, weapons loadouts, the language of soldiers who had done this before. A new alarm sounded. The holographic display showed harvesters breaking into the residential sector where council families lived. Civilians, children. The aliens in the command center made sounds of distress, their various languages blending into a universal expression of horror. "We must evacuate," someone said. "Pull all civilians to the core sectors and seal the bulkheads." "That would trap them," another voice argued. "The life support systems can't handle that many people in the core for more than a few hours." Taejun closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with decision burning clear in his gaze. He stepped forward into the cluster of council officials. "Ambassador Velthris," he said, his voice cutting through the panic. "Request permission to deploy human security forces to protect civilian sectors." The crystal being turned to him, its body flashing with colors that Dr. Hana had told him meant confusion and fear. Yes, of course. Any assistance with evacuation would be—" "Not evacuation," Taejun interrupted. "Protection. Active defense. My people will engage the harvesters directly and eliminate the threat." The command center went silent. Every alien in the room turned to stare at him. The military coordinator made a sound like wind through hollow tubes. "Eliminate. You mean kill them?" "Yes," Taejun said simply. "That's what they understand. That's the only language that will work here." Velthris's colors shifted rapidly. "We don't— The council doesn't engage in offensive combat operations. We defend, we retreat, we negotiate. We don't hunt. Then people will die," Taejun said flatly. "A lot of people. Is that acceptable to you?" The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Velthris made a sound like breaking glass. "Do what you must." Taejun touched his communicator. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder. The diplomatic polish was gone, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. "All teams, this is Apex 7. You are weapons-free. Rules of engagement. Protect civilians. Eliminate hostile threats with extreme prejudice. Execute." Through his earpiece, he heard Sergeant Daeho respond with one word. "Understood." Throughout the station, the transformation began. Human crew members who had been serving drinks at the reception shed their formal jackets to reveal tactical gear underneath. Scientists and engineers pulled weapons from hidden storage lockers. The cultural attachés who had been discussing Earth's poetry suddenly moved with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. In the corridors leading to the residential sectors, Daeho led his team forward. There were 12 of them, all moving in a formation that spoke of countless hours of training. Their weapons were held ready but controlled, fingers alongside the trigger guards until targets were identified. They communicated with hand signals and single words, a language of violence that needed no translation. The council civilians in the hallways pressed themselves against the walls as the humans passed. One alien child, something that looked like a small furry ball with large eyes, watched them go by. The child's parent pulled it back, making protective sounds, but the child kept watching. There was something in the way the humans moved, something graceful and terrible. Daeho's team reached the first breach point where harvesters had set up a barricade and were holding 17 council civilians hostage. The raiders were massive things, part organic and part machine with weapons built into their bodies. They had been designed to terrorize, to inspire fear in prey species, and it had always worked before. Daeho held up his fist, stopping his team. He evaluated the situation in seconds. 3 harvesters visible, possibly more behind cover. Hostages clustered in the center, too exposed for a direct assault. The harvesters were confident, their body language relaxed. They thought they had won. He made a series of hand signals. His team split up, 3 going high through maintenance passages, 3 going low through floor access panels, the rest staying with him for the direct approach. They moved silently, weapons ready, and something in their movements made the harvesters nervous. One of the raiders turned, its mechanical eyes scanning the corridor. It saw Daeho standing there just watching, just staring with those forward-facing eyes that marked humans as predators. The harvester raised its weapon, preparing to fire a warning shot. It never got the chance. Daeho's team struck from 3 directions at once, their fire controlled and precise. The engagement lasted exactly 7 seconds. When the smoke cleared, all 3 harvesters were down, sparking and twitching on the deck. Not one civilian had been injured. Deho moved forward to check the hostages, his weapon still ready. The council civilians stared at him in shock. One of them, a being that looked like a walking flower, made a sound like wind through leaves. "You killed them," it whispered, without hesitation, without mercy. Deho looked at the alien and his expression softened slightly. "We gave them the same mercy they were about to give you," he said. Then he touched his communicator. "Command, this is Team 1. Breach point secured, civilians safe. Moving to next objective." In the command center, Taijun listened to the reports coming in from all his teams. Breach point 2 secured. Hostages recovered from Sector 9. Harvester squad eliminated in the engineering section. His people were moving through the station like a surgical blade, cutting out the infection. The council officials watched the security feeds in stunned silence. They saw humans moving with purpose and skill, engaging the raiders without fear. They saw harvesters, the same raiders who had terrorized the galaxy for decades, falling back in confusion. The humans weren't running away. They weren't negotiating. They were hunting. Dr. Hana stood next to the military coordinator, who was trembling as he watched the feeds. "I don't understand," the coordinator said. "Your people are so calm. Their vital signs show elevated heart rates, but no panic, no fear paralysis. How is this possible?" "Evolution," Dr. Hana said quietly. "On Earth, we were both predator and prey. We learned to control our fear, to push through it. We developed the ability to enter a focused state during danger. Some cultures called it the warrior's mind. Others called it flow state. But it's the same thing, the ability to function at peak efficiency when death is close." Lieutenant Bora was monitoring the tactical displays, her fingers flying across the controls. "Captain, we've identified the Harvester Command Squad. They're in the station's main power junction, probably planning to cut life support if we don't surrender." "Deho's team is closest," Taijun nodded. "Send them in. Tell them to capture the commander if possible. We'll want to question them." On the security feed, they watched as Deho's team approached the power junction. The Harvester commander was there, surrounded by elite guards. The raiders had set up defensive positions, expecting an assault. What they didn't expect was patience. Deho had his team wait. They didn't rush in. They didn't make dramatic charges. They simply watched and waited, studying the harvesters' patterns, looking for weaknesses. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The raiders grew nervous, making mistakes, leaving gaps in their coverage. When Deho finally gave the signal, the assault was overwhelming. Flashbangs detonated, filling the junction with light and sound. His team moved through the chaos with practiced ease, their movements efficient and deadly. Within 30 seconds, every harvester guard was down. The commander tried to flee and found himself facing 3 human soldiers who had anticipated his escape route. Deho approached the harvester commander, his weapon trained on the being's center mass. "On your knees," he said in Galactic Common. The station's corridors were littered with the remains of the battle. Sparks fell from damaged ceiling panels and the smell of burned metal hung in the recycled air. Council security forces were just beginning to emerge from their defensive positions, moving slowly and carefully through the areas that human teams had already cleared. Taijun stood in the main tactical center, surrounded by holographic displays showing every sector of the massive station. Red markers indicated harvester positions. Blue markers showed human teams. Green markers represented secured areas with civilians. The red was shrinking rapidly, but it wasn't gone. Not yet. Lieutenant Bora approached him with a data tablet, her expression serious. "Captain, we've got a problem. The Harvester flagship is still docked at the outer ring. Our teams have secured the internal breach points, but there are at least 200 more raiders on that ship. If they decide to blow their docking clamps, they could take half the station with them." Taijun studied the tactical display. The Harvester ship was massive, bristling with weapons and armor. It was designed for raiding operations, built to terrify and overwhelm soft targets. But soft targets didn't shoot back the way humans did. "What's the status of our pilots?" he asked. "Ready and waiting," Bora replied. "They've been prepping the combat shuttles since you gave the initial authorization. 12 craft, fully armed and crewed." Taijun made his decision quickly. "Launch them. I want that flagship disabled and captured if possible. If capture isn't feasible, then destroy it. But make sure they can't damage the station when they go." Bora touched her communicator, and her voice took on the sharp efficiency of a combat controller. All pilots, this is command. You are cleared for immediate launch. Primary objective, disable Harvester flagship. Secondary objective, prevent station damage. Weapons free on all hostile targets. In the hangar bay of the Harmony's Edge, 12 pilots were already strapping into their combat shuttles. These weren't the diplomatic craft that had brought them to the station. These were war machines, fast and deadly, equipped with missiles and energy weapons. The pilots moved through their pre-flight checks with practiced speed, their hands dancing across controls they knew by touch alone. The lead pilot, a woman named Ji-Wan, was the first to launch. Her shuttle burst from the hangar bay and immediately banked toward the outer ring where the Harvester flagship waited. Behind her, 11 more shuttles followed in perfect formation, spreading out into an attack pattern that would have taken most species months to coordinate. The human pilots did it instinctively, communicating through brief tactical bursts and trusting each other to be exactly where they needed to be. The Harvester flagship detected them and opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, brilliant and deadly. But the human pilots were already moving, weaving through the incoming fire with reflexes honed by thousands of hours of training. They didn't fly away from the danger. They flew toward it, closing the distance with aggressive speed. "This is Wolf Leader," Ji-Wan's voice crackled over the tactical channel. Breaking into attack groups. "Wolf 2 and 3, take the port side engines. 4 and 5, starboard engines. The rest of you, with me, we're going for their command structure." The shuttle split up, each group diving toward their assigned targets. The Harvesters weren't used to prey that fought back like this. They were used to targets that ran, that scattered, that died easily. These humans moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks, covering each other, never giving the flagship a moment to recover. Inside the tactical center, Taejun watched the battle unfold on the displays. The Council's military coordinator stood beside him, all 6 of its arms trembling. "This is madness," it whispered. "Your pilots are flying directly into weapons range. They should maintain distance, use defensive formations. Defensive formations get you killed," Taejun replied without taking his eyes from the display. "The best defense is aggressive offense. Keep the enemy reacting to you instead of acting on their own plans." On the screen, Ji-Wan's shuttle released a spread of missiles at the flagship's bridge section. The Harvester ship's point defense systems managed to destroy 3 of the missiles, but 2 got through. Explosions blossomed across the armored hull, and the flagship began listing to one side as its navigation systems took damage. The other human pilots pressed their attacks, systematically destroying the Harvester ship's engines and weapon systems. It was surgical and brutal, a display of controlled violence that left the Council observers speechless. Within 15 minutes, the flagship was dead in space, drifting powerless and defeated. "Wolf Leader to command," Ji-Wan reported, her voice calm despite having just flown through a storm of enemy fire. "Target neutralized. No casualties on our side. The flagship is disabled but intact. Boarding teams can take it whenever you're ready." Inside the Harvester flagship, the raider commander named Krell stood in the ruined bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and injured crew. His mechanical eyes processed the impossible data. His forces had been destroyed. His ship was crippled, and it had all happened in less than 3 hours. For decades, the Harvesters had terrorized the Council species. They struck fast, took what they wanted, and disappeared before anyone could respond. The Council's defensive fleets were slow and predictable. Their tactics were entirely reactive. Fighting them was like fighting frightened children. But these humans were different. They didn't fight like prey. They fought like the apex predators from his database files, the kind of creatures that had evolved to kill efficiently and without remorse. Except these predators also had starships and military training and a cold, calculating intelligence that made them terrifying. Krell accessed his communication systems and sent a surrender signal to the station. It was that or die, and he had no interest in becoming a martyr for a failed raid. On the Grand Nexus station, Sergeant Dae-ho led a boarding team onto the Harvester flagship. They moved through the corridors with weapons ready, securing each section systematically. The Harvesters they encountered either surrendered immediately or were quickly subdued. The fight had gone out of them. They had seen what humans were capable of, and they wanted no part of it. Dae-ho found Krell in the bridge, surrounded by his command staff. The Harvester commander was larger than the humans, all mechanical enhancements and built-in weapons. But when Dae-ho entered the room, Krell didn't reach for any of his weapons. He just stared at the human with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. You fight like machines, Krell said in the Galactic common language. No emotion. No hesitation. Just cold efficiency. Deho kept his weapon trained on the commander while his team secured the other harvesters. We fight like soldiers, he corrected. Trained, disciplined, and focused. There's a difference, is there? Krell asked. You killed my people without mercy. You hunted us through your station like animals. Where is the difference? Deho considered the question for a moment. The difference is that we can stop. We can turn it off when the job is done.
Can you say the same?
Krell had no answer for that. He allowed himself to be secured and led away to the holding cells that the council was hastily preparing. As he was marched through the station corridors, he saw human soldiers helping injured civilians, human medics treating council wounded alongside their own people, human engineers working to repair damaged systems. The same beings who had just torn through his forces like a storm were now being gentle and careful with the people they had protected. It made no sense to him. How could they switch so quickly between violence and compassion? How could they be both predator and guardian? In the medical bay, Dr. Hana worked alongside council doctors to treat the injured. A council physician named Trellis approached her, its tentacles trembling with exhaustion and stress. I need to understand, Trellis said. I've been monitoring your people's biological responses during the combat operations. Your heart rates were elevated. Your bodies released stimulants and pain suppressors, but you never lost control. You never panicked. How is this possible? Dr. Hana finished bandaging a civilian's arm before responding. It's called the fight-or-flight response, but for humans we developed a third option. Fight and think. We can push our bodies into a high-performance state while keeping our rational minds in control. It's not perfect and it takes training, but it's part of our evolutionary heritage. Trellis made a sound like water flowing over stones. It's terrifying. You're terrifying. You came here as diplomats with art and music and poetry, but underneath you're still apex predators. How can we ever trust that you won't turn on us? Dr. Hana looked at the council doctor with compassion in her eyes. Because we choose not to. Every day, every moment, we choose cooperation over conflict. We choose peace over violence. The capacity for violence doesn't make us evil, Doctor. It's what we do with that capacity that defines us. In the council chambers, an emergency session had been called. Hundreds of representatives gathered to discuss what had just happened. The images were being played on every screen. Human soldiers moving through combat with lethal precision. Human pilots attacking a ship 10 times their size. Human commanders making life-and-death decisions in seconds. The Grand Nexus station was slowly returning to normal, but nothing would ever truly be the same. Repair crews worked around the clock to fix the damage from the harvester attack. Medical teams treated the injured, and everywhere, council species watched the human visitors with new eyes that held both gratitude and fear. Taijun walked through the residential sectors where the worst fighting had occurred. The walls still bore scorch marks from energy weapons, and in some places, the deck plating was stained with fluids from both harvester and council casualties. But mixed in with the destruction were signs of recovery. Human engineers worked alongside council technicians to restore power systems. Human medics had set up temporary clinics to treat anyone who needed help. The same people who had been lethal warriors hours ago were now patient caregivers. A small council child approached him, the same furry creature with large eyes that he had seen earlier. The child held out something, a drawing made with colored sticks on a piece of flexible material. It showed crude figures, some with 2 legs and some with 4 or 6. They were all holding hands. Thank you for saving my parent, the child said in broken Galactic common. Taijun knelt down to the child's level and accepted the drawing with gentle hands. You're welcome. I'm glad your parent is safe. The child's parent appeared, making apologetic sounds and trying to pull the child away. But Taijun just smiled and waved, tucking the drawing carefully into his uniform pocket. As he stood up, he caught Lieutenant Bora watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. That's the part they don't understand, she said quietly. They saw us fight. They saw us kill. But they didn't see that we did it to protect them. They think violence and compassion can't exist in the same being. Then we'll have to teach them differently, Taijun replied. In the medical center, Dr. Hana was having a similar conversation with the council physician Trellis. They stood in a laboratory, surrounded by displays showing biological data from the recent battle. Trellis had been studying human responses during combat with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. "Look at this," Trellis said, gesturing to a screen with one of its tentacles. "During peak combat stress, your soldier Deho's body released massive amounts of adrenaline and other combat stimulants. His pain response was suppressed. His visual focus narrowed. His reaction time increased by 40%. It's like he became a different organism entirely. It's called entering a flow state," Dr. Hana explained. "Or some cultures call it the warrior's trance. We can trigger biological responses that enhance our combat ability while maintaining rational control. It's not magic. It's evolution and training working together." Trellis made a sound like wind through hollow tubes. "But how do you turn it off? How do you return to being peaceful after activating such a state? I've watched your people transition from combat to caregiving in minutes. It should be impossible." Dr. Hana pulled up a different display, this one showing neural patterns. "That's the key difference between humans and many other predator species. We developed complex social structures and moral frameworks. We built religions and philosophies and ethical systems. We learned to control our violent impulses through culture and training. The capacity for violence didn't go away, but we surrounded it with rules and consequences and social expectations." "So you choose peace," Trellis said slowly. "Every moment, every day you choose not to be violent." "Exactly. And that choice is more meaningful than never having the capacity for violence in the first place. A being that cannot hurt others isn't peaceful, it's just harmless. True peace is choosing not to harm when you could." Trellis was silent for a long moment, processing this information. "I think I'm beginning to understand. But many in the council won't. They'll see only the danger, not the discipline." "Then we'll have to prove ourselves," Dr. Hana said, "again and again, until they trust not just our restraint but our character." In the council chambers, the debate over humanity's membership had been going on for hours. The massive room was filled with representatives from all 15 council species, and the discussion had grown heated. Some spoke passionately in favor of humanity, pointing to the lives saved and the threat eliminated. Others argued just as passionately that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with full council membership. Ambassador Velthris had been listening to all sides, its crystalline body shifting through colors that indicated stress and deep thought. Finally, it called for silence and addressed the assembly. "We have seen what humans are capable of. We have seen their violence and their mercy. We have seen them fight like machines and care like family. The question before us is not whether they are dangerous. Clearly they are. The question is whether that danger can be trusted." A council member from the insectoid species rose to speak, its wings buzzing with agitation. "How can we trust beings who killed so easily? Who moved through our station like hunters through a forest? They are predators and we are prey. History shows us that this never ends well." Another representative stood, this one from the aquatic species, but they were hunting the harvesters, not us. They could have taken control of this station by force if they wanted to. Instead, they asked permission and followed our rules even when those rules were inadequate. The debate continued until Velthris made a decision. "I propose we hear from the humans themselves. Captain Taejun has been waiting. Let him speak before we vote." Taejun was called into the chamber. He stood alone at the center of the massive room, surrounded by thousands of alien beings, all watching him with various organs that served as eyes. The weight of their attention was enormous, but he had faced worse pressure in combat situations. He took a breath and began to speak. "Members of the council," he said, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the chamber. "I won't apologize for what my people did today. We saved lives. We protected the innocent. We stopped monsters who would have killed or enslaved thousands. That's not something I'm ashamed of." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Taejun continued. "But I understand your fear. You've lived in a galaxy where violence is rare, where conflicts are resolved through discussion and compromise. You've built something beautiful here, a society based on cooperation rather than domination. And then we arrived with all our history of war and conflict, and we showed you what we're capable of." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You're right to be cautious. We are dangerous. Every human carries the potential for violence inside them. It's part of our biology, our evolution, our history. But here's what you need to understand. That same history taught us the cost of unchecked violence. We fought wars that killed millions. We've seen what happens when the capacity for violence isn't balanced by wisdom and restraint. And we've spent thousands of years developing the moral frameworks, the ethical systems, the cultural practices that help us control our nature. A council member called out, "But how can we trust that control? How can we trust that you won't turn on us?" Taejun looked directly at the speaker. "The same way you trust each other. Through shared values, through mutual respect, through building relationships and proving ourselves over time. We're not asking for blind trust. We're asking for the opportunity to earn it." He gestured around the chamber. "You asked us to join your council because you valued what we created, our art, our music, our philosophy, our science. But all of those things exist because of our nature, not in spite of it. We create beauty because we understand ugliness. We cherish peace because we know the cost of war. We write poetry about love because we've experienced loss." Another representative stood. "What guarantee do we have that you'll always choose peace over violence?" Taejun smiled sadly. "None. Just like you have no guarantee that any of your own species will always make the right choice. Sentient beings have free will. We can choose wrong. We can make mistakes. The difference is that we're aware of our capacity for those mistakes, and we've built entire civilizations around preventing them." He pulled out the drawing that the council child had given him and held it up. "This is why we fight. This is why we're willing to be the monsters when monsters threaten the innocent. Because someone has to stand between the darkness and the light. And if we have to carry that burden, if we have to be the ones with blood on our hands so that others can remain innocent, then we'll accept that responsibility." The chamber was silent now. Velthris spoke, its voice thoughtful. "You speak of burden and responsibility. But how can we be sure you won't abuse the power that responsibility grants you?" "By watching us," Taejun said simply. "By setting rules and enforcing them. By building systems of accountability. We're not asking for unlimited authority. We're offering to be part of your community, subject to your laws, accountable to your standards. Use us where you need us, but watch us closely. Test us, challenge us, make us prove ourselves every day." He looked around the chamber one more time. "We didn't ask to be what we are. We didn't choose to evolve as predators, but we did choose what to do with that evolution. We chose to build rather than destroy. We chose to protect rather than prey upon. We chose to reach for the stars, not to conquer, but to connect. Give us the chance to prove that those choices are real." 6 months had passed since the Harvester attack on Grand Nexus Station. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Human advisors now worked throughout Council space, teaching defensive tactics and strategic thinking. Human engineers helped upgrade station security systems. Human diplomats navigated the complex web of Council politics with growing skill. But the biggest change was in how the Council species viewed themselves and their place in the universe. Captain Taejun stood in the training facility on the military station, designated Defense Point 7. Before him, a mixed squad of Council soldiers from 6 different species was running through combat drills under the supervision of Sergeant Dae-ho. The alien soldiers moved awkwardly, their bodies not designed for aggressive maneuvers, but they were trying. That was what mattered. "Hold your position," Dae-ho called out in Galactic Common. "Don't retreat just because the enemy advances. Make them work for every meter. Make them pay a price." One of the Council soldiers, a being with 4 legs and armored plates, stopped in confusion. "But our doctrine teaches tactical withdrawal to preserve forces." "Your doctrine gets you killed," Dae-ho said bluntly. "Tactical withdrawal is fine when you have somewhere to withdraw to. But when you're protecting civilians or holding a critical position, sometimes you stand and fight. Sometimes you make the enemy bleed." The soldier's translator made sounds of distress, but it returned to the drill. Slowly, painfully, the Council species were learning that their peaceful nature didn't mean they had to be helpless. Lieutenant Bora approached Taejun with a data pad. "The tribunal is ready for sentencing. They're asking if you want to attend?" Taejun nodded. The trial of Krell and the Harvester raiders had been going on for months. The first time the Council had prosecuted such a case with human legal observers present. It had been educational for both sides. The Council learned about concepts like deterrence and proportional justice. The humans learned about the Council's focus on rehabilitation and understanding. The tribunal chamber was smaller than the Council assembly, but still impressive. Krell stood in the center, his mechanical enhancements looking dull and lifeless. The months of captivity had changed him. He no longer looked like a terrifying raider. He looked tired and broken. The lead judge, a floating being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. Krell of the Harvesters, you have been found responsible for 17 counts of hostage-taking, 43 counts of assault, theft of biological materials, and conspiracy to commit mass murder. The tribunal must now decide your sentence. Krell raised his head and looked directly at Tae-jun, who sat in the observation area. I have a question for the human captain before sentencing. The judges conferred briefly, then allowed it. Tae-jun stood and walked to the chamber floor. Ask your question, he said. Krell's mechanical eyes focused on him. You defeated us in hours. Your people moved through our forces like we were nothing. You could have killed us all easily. Why didn't you? Why did you capture us instead? Tae-jun considered the question carefully. Because we're not you. We don't kill when we can capture. We don't destroy when we can disable. The capacity for violence doesn't mean we have to use maximum violence every time. Restraint is what separates soldiers from murderers. But you killed many of my crew. Yes, the ones who were actively threatening civilians or refusing to surrender. The ones who gave us no choice. But you surrendered, so you lived. That's how it works. Krell made a sound like grinding metal. We ruled through fear for decades. You ended us with something we never expected. Discipline, control, professional competence. We were amateurs playing at being warriors. You showed us what real warriors look like. The judges pronounced their sentence. Life imprisonment with the possibility of rehabilitation. Krell and his crew would spend years in council correctional facilities, working to understand what they had done and why it was wrong. It was a more merciful sentence than most human systems would have given. But Tae-jun respected it. The council was trying to hold on to their values even when dealing with violence. Dr. Hana's Institute for Interspecies Understanding had become one of the most important facilities in council space. Representatives from every member species came to learn about human psychology, biology, and culture. But more importantly, they came to learn about themselves and how their peaceful natures had left them vulnerable. She stood before a class of council military officers, her presentation showing images of Earth's history, wars, conflicts, genocides, but also peace treaties, international laws, the United Nations, the long, painful journey toward global cooperation. The key thing to understand, she explained, is that our capacity for violence forced us to develop strong ethical frameworks. We had to create rules and consequences because without them, we would have destroyed ourselves. Your species never needed those frameworks because you never had the same potential for destruction. A council officer raised one of its tentacles. So you're saying our peaceful nature made us weak? No, Dr. Hana said firmly. Your peaceful nature is a strength. It allowed you to build this amazing civilization, to reach the stars without destroying yourselves first. But it also left you unprepared for true predators. That's what we're here to help with, not to make you violent, but to make you capable of defending what you've built. The officer considered this. Can we learn to be both? Peaceful but capable of violence when necessary? That's what humans do every day, Dr. Hana replied. It's not easy. It requires constant vigilance, strong moral education, and cultural practices that reinforce the right choices. But yes, it's possible. You can keep your peaceful nature while developing the capability to defend it. In the Council's Central Intelligence Facility, alarms began sounding. Lieutenant Bora was the first to see the reports and immediately contacted Tae-jun. Captain, we have a situation. Unknown vessels have entered the Rim territories. They're not harvesters. They're something new, and they're destroying everything in their path. Tae-jun was in his quarters aboard a human frigate stationed at Defense Point 7. He pulled up the tactical displays and felt his stomach tighten. 3 colony worlds in the Rim had gone silent in the past hour. Long-range sensors showed massive energy signatures, far beyond anything the harvesters had possessed. Ambassador Velthris appeared on his communication screen, its crystalline body pulsing with agitated colors. Captain, the Council is in emergency session. We're receiving distress calls from the Rim. Entire worlds are going dark. We need to respond, but... The ambassador trailed off and Tae-jun understood what was left unsaid. The Council didn't know how to respond to this. They were still learning. We'll handle it, Tae-jun said. Give me authorization to assemble a task force. Within hours, the first combined human Council military fleet was assembled. Human warships worked alongside Council vessels. Their crews a mix of species. Human tactical officers advised Council captains. Council scientists provided information on the affected regions. It was improvised and imperfect, but it was happening. Sergeant Deho stood in the briefing room of a council warship, looking at the alien soldiers he had been training for the past 6 months. They were scared. He could see it in their body language, in the way their various biological systems were reacting to stress. But they weren't running. They weren't freezing. They were scared and still preparing to fight. Listen, he said, speaking in the simple galactic common they all understood. Fear is normal. Fear keeps you alive, but you can't let fear control you. Remember your training. Remember why you're doing this. Those are our people out there. Council citizens who need protection. That's worth fighting for. One of the younger soldiers, a being that looked like a walking crystal similar to Velthris, spoke up. But what if we fail? What if we're not strong enough? Then we try anyway, Deho said.
Because trying and failing is better than not trying at all.
And you won't be alone. You have your squad, you have your ships, and you have us. Humans will stand with you. The fleet jumped to the rim territories, and what they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The attacking force was massive, technologically advanced, and completely ruthless. They weren't raiders like the harvesters. They were conquerors sweeping through space like a tidal wave of destruction. On the bridge of the lead human warship, Taejun studied the tactical situation. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower. A conventional assault would be suicide. But humans had never been conventional, Lieutenant Bora, he said. I need you to coordinate with the council ships. We're going to use their defensive systems as shields while our ships provide the offensive punch. It's going to require perfect timing, and trust. Bora looked at him with concern. Sir, we've never done combined operations at this scale. The council crews aren't ready, they'll have to be. Send the tactical plan to all ships. We move in 10 minutes. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Human ships darted through enemy fire, protected by council vessels' powerful defensive shields. Council ships held their positions, trusting human commanders to keep them safe while they provided cover. It was terrifying and beautiful, a dance of cooperation between species that had barely known each other 6 months ago.